This cannot be ignored. The New York Jets, with the NFL draft very, very close, around 48 hours away, we are seeing a ton of new updates on multiple players that have been pretty hidden from Jets fans' radars, as they did not seem as if they were major threats for these Jets selections, and now things are changing. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jets Digest. It's Chris and Matt here, and we're going to jump right into things. As always, if you guys are part of that 68% that's not subscribed, make sure to subscribe to Jets Digest. Thank you to everyone who is subscribed, but let's jump into the video. We do have a lot to discuss as the New York Jets find themselves in an interesting spot with multiple different players that have not really been linked to the Jets in the past as much, and now what we're seeing is a bit of a turn. Now, taking a look at what was revealed by none other than Adam Schefter, a pair of Texas players, offensive tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. and cornerback Jhade Barron, have generated less talk than some of the other prospects at their positions, but both are in position to go higher than some people realize, with Banks being in play for Miami at 13 and Barron being linked to the Jets as well. So very interesting stuff to see. You got to wonder what Darren Mougey has planned. But this is interesting, Matt.
Chris, just because they're not the prospects that you have come to know and come to expect the New York Jets to draft, that doesn't mean you can call them threats. They're not threats to be drafted. Jhade Barron is a
threats to me personally.
He is a really good cornerback,
threats to me.
A highly versatile player, reminiscent of Brian Branch, who Aaron Glenn had on that Detroit Lions defense. He was their nickel corner, played safety for them as well. They drafted him in the second round, but definitely played above that draft status, played himself into what is going to be a pretty big safety contract when he comes up for contract. But Jhade Barron is a cornerback who can play a lot of positions, very similar to Brian Branch. You know, Aaron Glenn remembers how successful that player was and is at least thinking about selecting this player. I think if the New York Jets were going to go out and select Jhade Barron, it would have to be after a trade down. Yes, I know this guy was the Jim Thorpe Award winner, which is college football's best defensive back, but another defensive back won the Heisman. So what are we doing when we're voting on that award? That doesn't make sense to me. But I also think we are forgetting about Will Johnson just because he was injured to end the season. People are forgetting how good that player is. He is rangy. He has the height and the arm length that you're looking for out of a cornerback. Jhade Barron's only 5'11", which isn't too short to play cornerback, but it's not a strength. We know when you are drafting in the top 10, you are looking for elite traits. You're looking for things that you cannot teach other players. And you can teach Will Johnson to have more versatility like Jhade Barron, but you can't teach Jhade Barron to grow 3 inches. So I still think Will Johnson, while he's not a perfect scheme fit, the New York Jets want to play man. He's more of a zone corner. I think Will Johnson, if the New York Jets want to go with the cornerback, Will Johnson would be the selection there. Also, after signing Brandon Stevens, like you have brought up, to a multiple year deal, he's one of the longest tenured guys of the new free agent crop that Darren Mougey just signed. So it would be a little bit strange to go ahead and draft a third cornerback on top of that, seeing how we also have Michael Carter II under contract as a top 2 paid nickel corner in the NFL, and we're about to have to pay Sauce Gardner a ton of money. Now, that does sound like a little bit too much investing in one position. I am a fan of draft the best player available, so that's why I would have respect for Darren Mougey if he did go ahead and select another cornerback in the draft, because that would signal to me that they are not compromising on the draft the best player available approach. And even if they are really well off at that position, they're going to go ahead and take the best player available in the draft. What that does is that makes sure your young guys, your rookies, those rookie contracts, they are the best possible players that you have. And that creates more flexibility going forwards because you can trade the excess players if you are too strong at one position. And when these guys are still young, they're going to have a lot of trade value. I understand. I'm not saying they're going to draft Jhade Barron to trade him, or they're not going to draft Jhade Barron to trade Sauce Gardner, but they would have more flexibility in mind there, and that would open up more cap space if you drafted Jhade Barron, and you wouldn't have to pay Sauce if you didn't want to, because you would still have what we would imagine would be a lockdown corner. You're not drafting a guy in the first round to not be a lockdown corner. So this news, we talk about, you can't ignore the odds shift when it comes right before the NFL draft, because that usually signifies that Vegas knows something that we don't. but I really think that there are bigger holes on the New York Jets and better options with our 7th overall selection in this draft on Thursday night.
Yeah, I sort of agree. I think there are better options out there. I mean, I still think, and I agree that you should draft for best player available, and I just wonder if Barron. I don't really see him or Will Johnson as going to be the best player available at 7th overall. I do believe that Armand Membo is still better and fits better, and there is a point to me where I wouldn't mind if the Jets decided to draft for fit in a sense that, like, if it's pretty close in who they believe is the best player available, then you go with the guy who fits better. Obviously, if you think someone's going to be a downright superstar, then you draft him, like, no doubt about it. But if you're feeling a bit conflicted, go with the team need if you feel like these guys are similarly ranked on your big board. So that's a huge part of things as well. I do sort of think that the Jets, seeing a new change like this definitely is interesting, because it's usually stuff like this the week of that either screams this is who they've been looking at for a while and it's now getting really out to the public, or it's just a complete smokescreen being set up for the Jets. And it is interesting that just seeing that Barron's now being linked to the Jets at that 7th overall spot, something we really haven't seen in the past. So it does make me wonder what took this amount of time for his name to first really come up at this selection.
It could be people just getting bored and they see the connection between a versatile defensive back and they look at Aaron Glenn, his background as a defensive back, and they're just looking for more news to put out about the Jets. But that's what I would say if it was, random smaller outlets pushing this. But Adam Schefter himself is talking about this. So this could come from him just being asked too many questions and being asked, like, Jhade Barron, could he go to the Jets? And he just, like, says yes. But it does definitely sound like there is some smoke behind this. We're hoping that if the New York Jets do stick and pick, that we're not taking this player at 7. Don't think he's good enough to be deserving of a selection that high in the NFL draft on Thursday night. But after a trade down, this is a player who, while I don't believe he's deserving of a top 10 pick, I do believe he is easily deserving of a top 32 pick, a first round pick. So if the New York Jets were able to trade down, get either another player to fill one of their holes, or get a draft pick for the future to trade up in a future draft, or select another player in a future draft, I could see this guy becoming a much more realistic target. Just don't love him at 7.
Now, when I first woke up today, which was clearly a while ago because I look wide awake right now and definitely my face isn't puffy and my eyes aren't red or anything, but when I woke up, I saw a Saints beat writer say that no matter what happens, they personally would be surprised if they saw Shedeur Sanders get picked there. Outside of
Get picked to the Saints or to the Jets?
To the Saints, sorry.
Okay.
And the reason that has an impact is because at the end of the day, that would affect trade-ups and situations like that. And this was quote tweeted by a Jets fan who mentioned, I forget the name, but basically they mentioned that it kind of feels like that might be one of the final nails in the coffin of trying to trade up or trying to trade down, because at the end of the day, there's only now so many teams that would want to trade up for a quarterback, which does have an impact. Obviously, there's other positions teams want to trade up for. For instance, the Atlanta Falcons desperately do want to get ahead of other teams in their division, considering all of them want an edge rusher. So situations like that, specifically Jalen Walker related. And at the end of the day, I do think it's getting a bit harder at this point for the Jets to maybe find a trade down situation, but I expect they would still be able to. And I would like them. Again, I'd still rather the Jets trade down. So, especially you go.
So, I was going to say I have to wholeheartedly disagree. I think today it is easier than it's ever been for the New York Jets to trade down in the draft, because as we get closer to the NFL draft, teams and GMs and coaches, they get more and more excited about the players coming out of the draft. And when there's more excitement, you feel like you have to have them. People are afraid of missing out on a certain prospect. And that's where you get the guys making the bad trade ups. That's where you get the guys overpaying, the teams low down the board overpaying to come up and go get their guy. And that's exactly what we're looking for. There are teams who maybe the Steelers early in the year thought that Shador Sanders was going to be off the board within like the top couple picks, but now that they see that he could be falling, maybe they weren't willing to trade up to 3, but they would be willing to trade up to 7. And now they're going, wow, we could possibly have Shador Sanders. This has been our guy. We've had our eye on him for so long, but we thought we would have no shot at him. Is actually possible. The closer we get to the draft, the more valuable your draft picks become. So that's why I think it's the right move for the New York Jets to hold on to their draft capital until the right deal comes along. Their pick will be at its highest demand when it's on the clock, when we can see which players are there and which players aren't there. There's going to be at least one guy that other teams are going to be like, wow, I can't believe he's still there. Maybe, like you said, maybe the Atlanta Falcons want to come up and grab Jalen Walker. The edge class is very deep, but it's deep at the edge defensive lineman. Jalen Walker is a linebacker lineman hybrid. He's kind of like a Micah Parsons. I really think that could be someone that the Falcons might want to target coming up ahead of the Carolina Panthers, who need a pass rusher. So they would be likely to take him at 8 unless they determine they want a pass catcher for Bryce Young. So like you said, the divisional teams, the Panthers at 8, the Saints at 9, both being in the NFC South with the Atlanta Falcons, makes the Falcons more likely to want to trade up. When it comes to a trade up, the New York Jets got to hope and pray that Shador Sanders is available at their pick, because that's going to be the guy who will generate the most trade up interest and be able to get us the best return for the 7th overall pick should we end up trading down.
Yeah, I guess with the Saints still picking at 9th, it does make it that teams will want to get ahead of them when it comes to Shador, especially with Derek Carr potentially being out for the year.
And there's another team. There's another team that is picking right behind us that people are starting to think about. Do they want quarterbacks? We're hearing that Brock Purdy, his contract is getting very expensive, as it should be expensive because he's a good quarterback and those don't grow on trees. But people are starting to whisper, like, do the 49ers want to run it back with another rookie quarterback instead of Brock Purdy? And could they draft that quarterback at 11? I always talk about how Shador Sanders has his shortcomings, but if you put him on the San Francisco 49ers, I think he would be immediately, at least, or maybe not immediately, but, by week 8, as good as Brock Purdy. I think Shador Sanders would be a perfect fit for Kyle Shanahan with the way he can scheme up open guys and make it really easy on Shador Sanders. All they would have to do is protect him. They would only have to trade up 4 spots from 11 to 7. We've seen in the past the 49ers are willing to shell out massive amount of draft capital to move up the draft to go get the quarterback that they covet. And it would greatly behoove the Jets if the San Francisco 49ers would be interested in a Shador Sanders trade up.
It would greatly behoove me if everyone could subscribe to this channel. Guys, like this video, turn on post notifications, subscribe. We'll see you later. Or will you? Okay, you will. You definitely will.